but you guys all understand that. So we're holding on the bottom of 70b3, all the way on the bottom. The Mishnah said, Kidesh Yodav Raglov. He sanctified his hands and his feet. So as we talked about yesterday, 5 times the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, immersed in the mikvah. Every time he changed clothing, from the white clothing to the gold clothing, and the gold clothing to the white clothing. And in the process, before taking off the clothing, he washed his hands and his feet. And after he put back on the clothing, he washed his hands and his feet. So there were 5 immersions, 10 sanctifications of the hand and the feet. Okay? And then what do we say? He then went back into the Holy of Holies, wearing the big day love on the white vestments to retrieve the pan that held the incense and the pan that had the hot coals, the ladle and the pan. They were obviously had to be retrieved from the Holy of Holies. It's the second time he's entering the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Tanu Rabbanan, the Rabbanan say, Uba Aaron and oil moed. Aaron shall come to the oil moed, to the tent of meeting. Lomo Huba, where's he coming from? He's doing it in order to remove the ladle and the coal pan, which he had left there earlier in the day when he had brought in the incense and burnt and offered up the incense in the Holy of Holies, and then left it there to go back to do the avodah, the services outside the Holy of Holies. Now he went back a second time to retrieve them. Good, we're on today's daf. Okay, here we go. Sha'akola parsha kula, for the whole portion in Parshas Achrei Mos, in Sefer Vayikra chapter 16, Nemra ala Seder is said. It is said in chronological order, Chutz mi Pusik Zu, except for this verse. Look at number 1 in the art scroll, the second paragraph. According to the sequence of verses, Aaron's re-entry in verse number 23 is written prior to his offering of the 2 rams in verse 24. In fact, the Kohen Gadol's re-entry to remove the ladle and the coal pan took place after the offering of the 2 rams, as detailed on the Mishnah yesterday that we learned. So that's what it's saying, that this one pasuk, verse 23, is out of order with verse 24. So says the Gemara, we're going to keep one finger up on top and one finger on the bottom, because we're going to keep on doing that. My Tama, what is the reason that this one pasuk is out of order? Amar Rav Chizda, Gemiri, we have a tradition that what? Chamesh Tefilos, that there were 5 immersions, that he went into the mikveh 5 times, the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, V'asara Kiddushin, and 10 times he sanctified his hands and his feet, meaning he changed the clothes 5 times, and prior to putting on the clothes, he sanctified his hands and his feet. After putting on the clothes, he sanctified his hands and his feet. V'asara Kiddushin Toivel Kohen Gadol, that the Kohen Gadol Mekadesh by B'yom, that he immersed himself in the mikvah, the Kohen Gadol, and sanctified his hands and feet. V'i amrit kesidron kesivi. But if you're going to say that all the psukim over there in Achrei Mos in chapter 16 were written in order, and verse number 23 was not out of order, you'll find you only have 3 immersions and 6 sanctifications. So if you take a look at number 3 on the bottom in the notes, we start with the second. We start with the second sentence. If we take all the verses in and assume that they are in chronological order, then it would emerge that the Kohen Gadol donned the white vestments only once, performing without interruption the entire service of the day, beginning with verse 6 and ending with the removal of the ladle and coal pan here in verse 23. In addition, he will have first donned the golden vestments in the morning to perform the morning tamid and some of the musafim, according to some of the Tanoim. And after removing the white vestments, he will have done the gold vestments again, as it says in 24, to complete the outer offerings of the day. Well, in that case, if you complete it like that, you only end up with 3 changes of clothing, which means only 3 immersions in the mikvah and 6 sanctifications of the hands and the feet. But we know in tradition, that there was 5 immersions and 10 washing of the hands. That must mean that he changed his clothes 5 times. Well, if he changed his clothes 5 times, one pasuk over here has got to be out of order. And that's what we're saying. Pasuk 23 is in fact coming after Pasuk 24, requiring other changes of clothing. Good. Says the Gemara Vaita, Maskebla Rab Zera Vidilma. Perhaps the interruption was for this. Maskebla Bisoya Napse Bechutz. He interrupted the white clothing, the white vestments, and to put back on the gold vestments with regard to the goat that was offered outside the sanctuary. What, in other words, go to number 4, note number 4, go to the, why do we say that any of the verses are out of order to come to the 5 immersions and 10 sanctifications? Granted that the white vestment service had to be interrupted with some gold vestment services in order to get the 5 changes of clothes, why not say that it was the outer he goat chatas that was inserted before the removal of the ladle and the coal pan? The offering of the outer goat chatas is not mentioned at all in chapter 16 in Sefer Vayikra, Parshas Achrei Mos, but only in Parshas Pinchas in chapter 29 in Sefer Bamidbar, and might very well take place in between the sending of the goat to Azazel and the removal of the ladle and the pan from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, with the offering of the 2 rams to follow in sequence. In other words, it's possible to work it out without getting stuck up in the details. It's possible to insert one avodah, one service that's completely not mentioned over there in Leviticus in Achrei Mos, and say that, insert that into the thing. And if you insert that, then the psukim are all in order, and we still get the 5 changes of clothes and 5 immersions and 10 sanctifications. Says the Gemara, like I said, very technical, and we're just going to fly down this thing. We're not going to get too stuck into the actual things. Amar Abaya, says Abaya, no. Amar Kra, the pasuk says, V'yotza v'ases oilasai. He shall go out and do his oila and the oila of the nation. That means his ram and the ram of the nations. Mitzia Rishona Ovid ve'elu v'ayala. This verse implies that immediately upon the Kohen Gadol first going out of the sanctuary, he does the ram and the ram of the nation. Not the second time when he goes back in to retrieve does he do it. So therefore you cannot say that you're inserting. And if that's then the case, then we've got to come back to one of these psukim, number 23, verse 23, it's out of order, in order to get to the 5 and the 10. Good. Now we go further. Rava says you have to say that verse 23 is not in order. Amakra, because the pasuk says, "V'foshat is big day abad," and he shall remove his linen vestments, i.e., the white vestments, the white clothing. She'ein Talmud loyma asher lovash. The Torah didn't have to say that he wore kulam adam poishet elamash shalovish, because it's impossible for a person to remove their clothing unless, of course, they're wearing their clothing. So the Torah didn't have to say, remove the clothing that you're wearing. Obviously, you remove the clothing that you're wearing. So what's the extra words? Elamat Talmud loyma asher lovash. What is the extra words that he wore? What is it coming to tell us? Okay, we're on 71A2. It comes to tell us, Shalovash Kivar. It means that he already wore them once before. That means we're dealing somewhere with, he hadn't gone into the Holy of Holies once, come out, switch to the gold clothing, and now has to put back on the white clothing that he wore once before to go back into the Holy of Holies. If that's then the case, it must mean that it's going back to retrieve the ladle and the pan. And if that's the case, if it's going back to retrieve the ladle and the pan, it means that things are out of order and we get to our 5 and our 10. Maskavlo Rabba Barashila, is that a fact? Same question we had before. Maybe it's because he's dealing with the ram that's taken care of, that the service is done outside the sanctuary, which is completely not mentioned in Leviticus, is completely not mentioned in Sefer Achrei Mos, is only mentioned in Pashas Pinchas in Bamidbar. Sorry, everybody. Hang on one second. Okay, guys, I'm back. Can you guys hear me? Jeff, can you hear me? Jeff, can you hear? Yep, perfect. Okay. So Abizai, which says the Gemara, which means that when is the outside ram done? Immediately after he first leaves the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So it can't be by the second putting on of the clothing. It's dealt with the first time that he took off the white clothing. Therefore, that's why it's not mentioned over here. And therefore, in order from our psukim to get to 5 immersions and 10 sanctifications of the hand and the feet, we've got to say verse 23 is out of order. Great. But is it true that this whole portion of the parsha in Achrei Mos in Vayikra is stated in chronological order, except for verse 23? But the pasuk that's written first, the first pasuk written over there in the parsha is and the fats of the chatas you shall burn on the altar. And then it says and the chatas bull, which was the inner bull, the kohen's bull, and the chatas higo, that means the soil Hashem, the goat that was chosen for Hashem, whose blood is brought, and that's no good, which would seem to mean that the fats of the chatas are brought up on the outside altar. On the imurin, the sacrificial parts are brought up on the outside altar first, before you deal with the blood of the chatas bull and the chatas goat. And we know that's absolutely not the case. We learned this well before, back on 68b. We learned Haroyes HaKoyin Shu Kaira, one who sees the Koyin Gadol when he reads from the Torah, Einu Roya Parvisor and Israfim, cannot see the bull and the goat that are being burned because they're too far apart, because the two procedures occur simultaneously. The Ilue Murichatos, Basa Hachi Katale, therefore are burnt only afterwards. So the Torah says, you're right, there are 2 psukim out of water. Except for the first pasuk, this pasuk is out of order, and pasuk number 23 is out of order, but everything else is in order. Says the Gemara, what makes you to say that you alter the order found in these psukim, Shabbos Masnisan, maybe change the order that you found in the Mishnah to make it conform to the psukim that are mentioned in the Torah. Amar Abaya, Amakra, because the pasuk says, the one who sends the Azazel goat shall immerse, and the one who burns them shall immerse. The word burns by both. The one who sends out the goat to Azazel, the one who burns the carcasses of the bull and the goat. It both says the same language. Who burns. Just like the sending out of the goat, the goat to Azazel takes place earlier. So does the burning of the bull and the goat also take place earlier. So therefore, this can't be the case. It's only, therefore, the order that the Mishnah brings is correct. Says the Gemara, Adarabba, but I can look at it just the opposite. Just like the one who burns refers to the one which takes place now. after the sacrificial parts of the inner chatas are burnt on the altar, are brought up and offered on the outside altar. At mishaleach hashta, we should say the one who sends away the azazel goat refers to now after the sacrificial parts are offered. In other words, much later. We're now on 71A3, to which the Gemara answers on 71A3. The word Hamashaleach, it means in diktuk, in language, it means that it occurred earlier. It has a better understanding of earlier. Rava Amar, Rava says, Amakra Yamoid Chai, that the goat that's going to Azazel shall be alive to atone. Ad Moshe Yehi Zokud Lamed Chai, until when does the Soyer Azazel required to stay alive in the Azara? Ad Shas Kapara, until the moment of atonement. What is the moment of atonement? Shas Kapara, what is the time of atonement? Bishas Matan Domim, the time of the blood applications of the inner chatas, when they applied the blood inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and then afterwards on the outside towards the paraichas, towards the curtain. Vesulai. But beyond this point, it does not have to stand alive. It could be sent into the wilderness to be thrown down the cliff. And that's why it definitely takes place before the Hakraba Seimurin al Gabi al Mizbeach HaChitzon. It definitely takes place before the offering up of the sacrificial parts on the outside altar. So says the Gemara, here we go. Asi Mishalech, the one who sends the goat to Azazel, then comes back the next day, the day after Yom Kippur. Matzu b'shuk l'kayin gadol. If he finds the kayin gadol in the street, Amalai, he says to the kayin gadol, Ishi kayin gadol, my lord kayin gadol, asanu shaluchusach. I have done your shalichus, I have done your commission by taking care of the sarah mishtalech, by taking care of the goat, the dispatch goat to Azazel. Matzai b'beisai, but if he finds the kayin gadol in his home, not in the public domain, but in his home, Amalai, he says to him, the one who gives life to the living, in other words, the Holy One, blessed be He, we have fulfilled His commission to do so. And the reason for this is, of course, they're all doing the Ratzain Hashem, the will of God, and doing the Yom Kippur service the way it was supposed to. But in honor of the Kohen Gadol, for the sake of the honor of the Kohen Gadol, if he meets the Kohen Gadol in public, he tells the Kohen Gadol, I have fulfilled your commission. But if he meets the Kohen Gadol in his house, he acknowledges that they're both fulfilling the commission of the Rebbeinu Shalom, of the Master of the world. Amar Rabbo, says Rabbo, Ki mitre rabbanim bahadim mipumpadisa, when the Rebbe's would leave one another from the city of Pumpadisa. Pumpadisa was the New York of its time, and that was the main body of Jewry in Chutz La'aretz, in the diaspora. Amr Hachi, they would say the following to each other. Mechaye Chayim, we're on 71A4. Mechaye Chayim, the one who gives life to the living. Yitein lecha Chayim aruchim v'toivim u'misukanim. Shall give you a long, good, and well-provided life. What is a well-provided life? Says the Gemara, Es halech lifnei Hashem ba'artzis achayim. David said, when David said, I shall walk before Hashem in the land of the living, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Zeh mekoim shivakim. This is the place of the markets. Look at Rashi, 3 lines from the bottom. Rashi, 3 lines from the bottom. Mokaim shivakim, sha'adam moitze liknais v'zainoisav. Because in the marketplace, a person can find the stuff that he needs to eat and live. And since at this point David was running around from place to place, and he was hungry and he was tired and he didn't have anything, so he was hiding in the midbar all by himself. He said, Oh, that I should walk before Hashem in the land of the living. Oh, he mispalel ala davar. He was mispalel to be in a place where there are markets, full markets. The pasuk goes further. Another pasuk. Ki oirech yomim u'shenois chayim v'shalom yosifulach. For the length of days and the years of life will they add to you. V'chiyei shanim shel chayim v'yei shanim she'einu shel chayim. Are there then years of life and years that are not life? So Amar Rabbi Elazar, Elu shenoisim shel adam hamispachos olav meirah l'toiv. These are the years of life that transfer the man from bad to good. Now, none of the days of a man's life are bad. We're talking about that in his own eyes, it looks bad. And now he can be marked the good. He started off poor, he became rich, or whatever the things are, and so that he's marked. What is the difference between days of life and years of life? We've talked about this many times before. Years of life is the years that Hashem allows for you, that Hashem gives to a person. Days is what we do with each day of our lives. The days are tied to us. Are we using them to their fullest extent? So we say you should have full days. You should use them constructively all your days. And the years, the amount of years you get, that's in the hands of the Creator. Another pasuk from Mishlei, from Proverbs. Aleichem ishim ekra. Unto you, ishim, men do I call. Ishim has two words. It can mean men, and ishim could also mean ishe lashem, like an offering to Hashem. So the Gemara says, what is the word men over here? Amar Rebbe Berachia, says Rebbe Berachia, Elu talmidei chachamim shedoimim lenoshim. These are the term for talmidei chachamim, Torah scholars, who appear similar to women, that they're non-aggressive and weak. V'oisim gevura ka'anoshim, but they perform feats of heroic strength like men, like the Mashah says, Ezu gibor hakovish es Yitzray. Who is a strong person? Somebody that overtakes his inclination. Okay, who overcomes his evil inclination. Bar Rabbi Berachia, it says Rabbi Berachia, Imraya Adam Shatoramus Poisekes Mizarai. If you see a person whose Torah is ceasing from his generations, from his kids and his grandkids are falling away from Torah, Yisabat Talmud Chacham. He should marry, either he should take another wife who's a daughter of a Talmud Chacham, or he should marry his children off to daughters of Talmid Chacham. Shenema im yaskin ba'oret shoroi ba'ofa yomus kizoi. Were its roots to become old in the ground and its trunk to die in the dirt. We're up to Amid Beis, Ayin Aleph Amid Beis 71b1. Meruach mayim yafriach, from a whiff of water it will blossom. Va'oser kotzir k'moi nota, and generate branches like a sapling. The idea being, take a sapling from a Talmud Chacham, take a daughter from a Talmud Chacham, and either marry her and have kids, and those kids will be yoinik, will drink from the mother and become Talmidei Chachamim, or marry your sons off to the daughters of Talmidei Chachamim, and they will bring your sons to come back to learning. The yontif hayahabab, and the Kohen Gadol would make a yontif, a feast for his friends upon exiting the Holy of Holies safely. Tanu Rabbanan, Ma'aseh v'Kohen Gadol echad. There was a case of a certain Talmud Chacham, Sheyatzav Beis Hamikdash, who came out of the Beis Hamikdash, and everybody out of respect was walking him home. But as soon as they saw Shemaya Avtalion were the Gedolei Hador, the heads, the great Talmidei Chachamim of the day, in the early days of the second Beis Hamikdash, who came from Gerim, were children of converts. And children of converts. Hi, Moshe, how are you?
They're bringing the van to me at 10:15 to the store.
They're bringing it to the store? Excellent. Thank you. That's my friend Moshe, who's driving the van and taking care of things today for everybody. to make sure things get to the wedding call, etc. I have excellent friends, wonderful friends. Even the Chazayu l'Shemaya v'Avtayan, as soon as they saw Shemayim and Avtayan, who were Gerim, but they were the great Talmidei Chachamim, Shavaku l'Didei, they abandoned the Kohen Gadol, because the halacha is that the Kohen Gadol in the early days of the second base of Mikdash were not very learned at all, and the halacha is you have to be mechabed the Torah before you even mechabed the Kohen Gadol. But Ozlei Basa Shemaya Avtayan, they all followed Shemaya Avtayan. L'Saif also Shemaya Avtayan l'Puri Minei the Kohen Gadol. Finally, Shemaya and Avtayan came close to taking leave of the Kohen Gadol and returned to their homes. Amar Lahem, so the Kohen Gadol said to them sarcastically, Yasib b'nei Abamin l'Shlam, may the descendants of the nations come in peace. In other words, you guys come from converts. Amalei, they replied back to him, Yasib b'nei Abamin l'Shlam, they should come in peace, the descendants of the nation, the Obdin Uvda the Aaron, who actually practiced the practice of Aaron HaKoyin, which is Oyev Shalom v'Roidev Shalom, who love peace and pursue peace, v'lo Yesei bar Aaron l'Shlam, and should not come in peace to the descendants of Aaron, you, the Kohen Gadol, the Loy Ovid Uvda the Aaron, who does not practice the practice of Aaron, who does not practice the pursuits of peace. If you look at Rashi, the first skinny line, Rashi over there says, and we'll just skip a couple of lines over there. It says, Im hayu ben gerim, if they happen to be children of converts, lo yamalai, do not tell them, Zacher ma'isa v'secher, remember the actions of your forefathers. You don't do that. Why hurt their feelings? You don't hurt people's feelings. You hurt people's feelings, it is not the way of peace. Let's go a little further. Let's see if I can get us down the Yomin a little bit, because I certainly have to split. So it says the Gemara over here. We've been talking about the vestments, the 4 vestments, the 8 vestments. Says the Mishnah, Kohen Gadol mishamish b'shmeina kelim. The Kohen Gadol serves with 8 vestments all year long, except on Yom Kippur. He takes off 4 of them when he goes into the Holy of Holies. But a regular Kohen only wears the 4 white. What are we talking about? Vikitunas. The regular Kohen serves with a tunic, okay, that were made of linen woven in checkered pattern. Messiah breeches. These were pants, also made of linen. Umitznefes, the turban, also made of linen. Va'abneit, and a belt, which there's a machlokes whether it was made out of shatnez, linen and wool, or just linen. Moisifin alav Kohen Gadol, they added to the Kohen Gadol the chayshen. We're on 71b2. The chayshen is the breastplate, the golden, the mixture of linen, techeles, blue wool, argamon wool, teilash shani wool, and gold threads. The ephod, and the ephod, this was made of gold, linen, and 3 types of wool, was a type of apron in the front. Ume'il, the robe. The robe was made of techeles wool, of blue wool, with a 4-cornered beged without sleeves, almost like our tzitzis. The tzitz, and that's the gold band that said on it, Kadosh Lashem. Be'elu nishalim be'urim betumin. Dressed in these 8 vestments, the Kohen Gadol would consult with the Urim V'Tumim. What is the Urim V'Tumim? So we know that it was the Shem Hashem's that was put into the Chayshin, which had the 12 Shvatim, 1 diamond, 1 jewel for each one of the Shvatim, and the jewels used to shine up in answer to questions that were asked it. The Gemara is going to talk about it here, so we're not going to get it into too much. The Ein is Shalom Elul Melech, but they would not consult the Urim V'Tumim on behalf of anyone, but only the king, Ula'ah Bezdin, the head of the Sanhedrin, Ulami Shatzibur Tzarech Boy, on behalf of somebody who the public needs, somebody important in the public. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanim, Devarim Shnema Behem Sheish. When the Gemara said, when things that the Torah says Sheish, which is linen, but Sheish also means 6. Rishon, Sheni, Shlishi, Revi, Chamishi, Sheish, six. But here it also means linen. It means also linen that chutan kafel shishi, that threads was spun sixfold. Machzar, when the Torah describes the linen as machzar, it means shemayna eightfold. Me'il, when it says regarding the robe, shnei masa, 12-fold cords. Paroichis, the curtain that separated the heichal from the kodesh hakadosh, from the sanctuary from the holy of holies, was made of 24 cords. Chayshin ve'ephod esimu mishmayna, and the chayshin and the ephod were made of 28 folded cords. Chut and couple shisha. When it says sheish, it was spun six. Minalon, how do I know it was spun with six? Damakra beyasu es akisoines ves amitznefes. Sheish ves parzi amikboy sheish ves nichsei bod sheish moza, and they were on 71b3, and they made the tunic of linen sheish. They made the turban of linen sheish, and the adorning hats of linen sheish, and the linen bod breeches of linen sheish. Chamishi kari ksibi. 5 mentions of the word linen were made in these psukim, where only one was necessary. You could have just said big day sheish, garments of linen, and then list out the following garments. Why does it keep saying 5 times sheish? One, it's for itself to teach us that the garments are made out of linen. One, to teach us that the thread should be sixfold, because the word sheish also means 6. The Chach used shazurin, that all 6 strands need to be spun together. So it was a thick, what do you call it? Thread. The Chad the Shar begodim shlai never b'sheish, and want to teach us that these requirements of sixfold and linen is regarding the other vestments in which the word sheish is not mentioned. This refers mainly to the me'il, the robe. The Chad la'akiv, and want to tell us this is obligatory, not just a very nice thing to do, but it's actually obligatory. Says the Gemara, my mash with the high sheish kitanahu. How do you know the word sheish means linen? The Amar Krov bad. In the middle of this pasuk it says bad for sheish. Something that grows from the ground singularly, stalk by stalk. Says the Gemara Ve'ema Amra. But if that's the case, it can mean wool, which also grows singularly with distinct fibers. Amra ipatsule mipatzla. Wool splits, says the Gemara. Kitana nami ipatsule mipsil. Flax will splits too, says the Gemara. Kinsa agalekukle mipipsil. Flax splits by means of beating it. Wool splits by itself. Ravina mehachach. Here, how do I know that the word sheish means linen? From this pasuk. Linen turbans shall be on their heads, and linen breeches shall be on their loins. This pasuk that you just brought is from the Navi Yecheskel, from the prophet Ezekiel. What do you call it? But before the Navi Yecheskel, the 1,000 years before him, how did they know that sheish was linen? Says the Gemara went on 71b4, we're almost finished. The Gemara answers, but according to you, that it would not be V'hodi Omer Rav Chizda. This the Rav Chizda said. This matter that the Kohen, who for any reason is not circumcised, let's say his 2 brothers before him died from the circumcision, so he's not circumcised, nonetheless is not allowed to do the avodah, the service in the Beis Hamikdash. We do not see straight out in the Torah of Moshe. We do not see it in the Torah of Moshe, in the 5 books, the Chamishi Chumshi Torah. We learn it out from the Navi Yecheskel, from Ezekiel, or the son of Buzi, who said, no stranger uncircumcised by heart, meaning somebody that's an apostate, or uncircumcised by flesh, because for whatever reason it cannot come into the temple. But before Yecheskel said this, how did they know the 1,000 years before that an uncircumcised kohen cannot come in? The answer is it was an oral tradition from the time of Moshe Sinai, from Moses on Sinai, which was never written down. And Yecheskel came and gave it scriptural support. Regarding the vestments, we have a tradition that sheish means linen. So Yecheskel came and gave it spiritual support. Mosha Shemoina. We said the word Mosha means 8 spun. Minolon, how do I know it means 8? And they shall make upon the ends of the road pomegranates of Techeles wool, blue wool, of Agaman wool, and Telash Shani wool, twined. Violif moza, shnei moza, twined. The word twined connected with the curtain that separates the sanctuary from the Holy of Holies. Just like the curtain, which we're going to learn later, requires a twisting of 24 strands. Here too it requires 24 strands. Which means that every thread was made of 8, because 8 times 3 is 24. Wait a minute, but let's learn the word twined from the chayshin and the apron, from the breastplate and the apron. Just like over there, you needed 28 fold. Over here, you should require 28 fold. It also says the word Marsa, says it can't be. It's more apt to learn something like the pomegranates regarding which gold is not mentioned. Something where gold is not mentioned, like with the curtain. As opposed to the breastplate and the robe in which gold is mentioned. The Rabbah says, no, just the opposite. Don and beged me beged. It's better to learn out a garment from a garment. Instead of learning out a garment from the curtain, which is like a tent. It's not a garment. Says the Gemara, rather, we're learning it out of the belt of the Kohen Gadol, which also contains 24 strands. And we're going to learn it out of something that's a garment, which it does not say gold. From the belt, which is a garment, which also doesn't say gold. And we're not going to learn something which contains no gold, like the pomegranates on the bottom of the robe, from something that the chayshin and the apron, which have gold. And now we're on 71b5, and we're coming to the end of today's Gemara. Rabbi Mori says, Tasenu ksiv, you shall make it after the fashion of the ephod regarding the chayshin, the breastplate. Tasenu, lezev eloyacher, means you shall make this, the chayshin, like the ephod, like the apron, but nothing else should be like the ephod. In other words, these are the only 2 things that have strands of 28. Rabbi Ashi, I'll tell you why you can't have this. Why it's only these 2. Because it said with regard to the pomegranate, with regard to it said before, and they shall make the ends of the robe, the me'il, pomegranates of the chelis wool, of argaman wool, of talash shani wool, twined. He says like this. It says, "V'asisa, you shall make along its edge pomegranates of the chelis, of argaman and talash shani. She'yisur kol isiyas Shabbos." The language says that all of them should be equal. The techeles, the argaman, and talash shani should be made equal. How are you going to get them to 28? Novet telasa asara asara. Are you going to say we should make 3 of the threads of 10 strands each? How you like telasa? Then you'll end up with 30 strands. 10 each. 3 times 10 is 30. Novet shrei tisha v'chada asara. You should make 2 threads of 9 and 1 of 10. This is also impossible. Amakra, the asisa. Sheyu kol esriyas Shabbos, that all of them should be equal with the same number of strands in each thread. In that case, you have no choice but to say that it's 24, not 28. Very good. Everybody, beautiful. We finished to the end of the Amid. Mazel